So, my field model. I don't even know where to begin. So it started at Red Rocks when I went to school there. And this was before I decided to drop out and pursue things on my own. Because education was just too slow. And I mean, they were making me take reading or English again. I'm not paying you to learn shit I've already learned just because I don't speak in like a proper terminology. Like, I don't care as long as I get the idea across. Language changes by generation. That's how naive we all are. And we're trying our best to like, keep it consistent, but it's just not going to work. It never works. Anyway, so I'm reading a post about pulsars. And at that time, well, that was today, but at that time, I wrote what I believe to be the unified field model on how you equate uh, infinity relative to zero, which is equal to 1. And I drew it as this, so that it all flips, where then 1 is, I think, relative to 0 and equal to infinity. Which means that in space-time you can have like this rotating structure of singularities that can break down infinitely into like subquantum physics. And that after that I solved Einstein's light clock. That was and how, and I have a video of me using a rubber band to display it, and how as you travel faster the increments of measurement stretch. And so to remain constant, you have to reduce the distance between the reflecting panels or whatever, mirrors or whatever he used, I forget now, but eventually you reach a certain point where then light has to travel in a straight line and it can't be measured anymore. And I think that's at the point where Einstein would talk about colored glass condensate. And so this all delved back into a few years later, after I was done with philosophy. What was it? I was watching a video of a spaghetti noodle and how it would break. And then it dawned on me, because I already had at that time quantum atmospheres that, there's a probability of interaction, annihilation, and construction of matter, which correlates to Einstein as well. And I watched this noodle break, and you would take a dry piece of pasta and the reflex of it, but it would break again. And I can formalize it as a quantum splash, is what I would call it. And, that's just decay, essentially, in concept. And it dawned on me about a gravitational field model. What's happening closest to the curve, the crest, or trough, so what do they call it? And then you have the crest, right? So you have the top of the noodle and the inside of the noodle, and they're experiencing separate tensions, separate heat, compression. And it got me thinking about gravity. That gravity could always be a linear force. And so that got me into my gravitational field model, that all quantum atmospheres are gravitational waves based on a theory of constant time. that time is infinitely dense and it's has infinite speed. And so what happens here happens anywhere else in the universe. Like, depending, it's sort of like quantum entanglement. Once you start to incorporate that into the gravitational field model, it's really complicated. And it is ridiculously complicated. Anyway, how that warping, see, you have more energy or more space behind mass pushing it together, depending on its it's density divided by volume and volume divided by density, and then that creates mass 1 and mass 2, and then you divide those and subdivide, and then you get all this, like, that leads into subquantum physics and how particles structure and lead to a standard model. I quit all of this because I started getting really bad migraines. And like, consistently, I would just push myself and push myself. And anyway, so time permeating through infinite density, it's very similar to how a pulsar functions. And that, so you have volume divided by density and density divided by volume. Like, that's the thing that everybody's kind of missed. And that's the whole, like, relative field model thing that I was making, and how it all flips. And that correlates to neutrinos and how they constitute mass. They form all this, like, it's not string network condensates, but it sort of is. And now, too, it's believed that black holes have this, like, mesh at their surfaces during Hawking radiation, which I was the first person to actually consider that, as far as I know. Like I said, I'm not educated, so I don't know if I'm not referencing somebody. You have to forgive me. Anyway, I did find where my little hole could be for getting an honorary PhD, something I've wanted for a long time. But at the same time, it's like, what am I going to do with it? Even if I get one, was my family finally going to be proud of me? They can invite me over for dinner? Anyway, so my honorary goes into that subdivisions of mass, as there's 2 states of mass. And that alone should earn me an honorary. But, like, why would I be done thinking? Let's have fun with my brain while I'm alive. So, they did prove a network of dark matter. They finally figured out how to detect it or something. I forget what it was. It was a long time ago. After I theorized it, that there's this weird, like, it's sort of, I call it a dark matter sponge that makes up universes. So if you imagine a sponge, you have the pores, that is a universe. And so that solves this idea of parallel universes and multiverse theory. It unifies it. But then you're going to have Hawking radiation from black holes, which is, like, per se, volume divided by mass multiplied by, or divided by the time rate of Hawking radiation over time. And then you have to get into subquantum physics so that you can figure out the string networking that happens. And then this happens too at a subdivision, where then molecules start to develop a standard model, And so the only way that you can do that is to cross vector. That means that when we live in one of these dark matter sponges, then the Hawking radiation from the outside is drawn in. And so what happens at, what the hell do you call that? I wish he was still alive. You know, I thought he was a robot, though. I thought he was like a human puppet. But if he was, actually still able to communicate, I'd really love to talk to him about this, but he died right after I came up with it. And so you get your radiation rate of Hawking radiation, but it's also through volumetric structure, and then you have to calculate quantum probability. And this leads into how fusion happens at the center of stars through superplasma. And so, yeah, if I could just do the math, I would get my honorary. But I don't know. I'm not motivated. This is it. This is the peak of physics. I am literally at the edge of it. That's it. So that's why I don't really share it. Because what else do we have to think about? Going into philosophy, I'm afraid that science will become a religion. That you can only speak what is right and never be wrong. Never wonder again. We lose our imaginations. It's very scary how it can change our entire futures. And anyway, so you have your radiation rate of a black hole, and then you have all these quantum probabilities of different singularities that form, and I call it quanta or subquantum, physics. And you get to the radiation rate of the dark matter sponge. And so this thing is either expanding, which explains why our universe is accelerating. It's because it's expanding because of Hawking radiation and then vectoring physics to create mass, which then creates, superplasma, stars, molecules, matter, all this other shit. Pretty much everything, right? And how you get into the Standard Model. See, this correlates to the Hadron Collider, where they were detecting all these little variables of different decaying states of matter. And so the Standard Model forms around what can sustain without Hawking radiation. In that at the center of all these atoms, there's still that radiation. However, because things are spinning, neutrons are adding to the spin, they're adding, integral rotational patterns and stuff like that formalizes, and it reduces decay. If you were to just simply take, because I had an old thought experiment. What the fuck was it? It was and this led into wormholes and stuff, and how to trick the speed of light so that we could technically travel faster than it. And I figured it out through this helical mesh network of electromagnetic repulsion of atoms at a quantum level, and how it can absorb and decay. And this goes back into my Tesla turbine. Now you know why I get so many migraines. Anyway, back to how I want to earn my honorary. And my family laughed at me when I said I could probably earn a Nobel Prize. It's because of all these theories, conformal psychocosmology. I figured that out. I didn't figure out the math, but then there's other things. When I was learning physics, I would test myself. I would think for and against and find various resolves, and then I would like fact check them or peer review technically with other people's work to see if I was on the right path and which one I chose. And then I would wire my brain to think against it when I was wrong. And so that's how I educated myself. And it was just walking to the grocery store every day. It was a good time. I honestly missed that. It was just so innocent and simple. Wasn't too much, wasn't too little. It was just a really good time. They renovated the Wendy's and they were making burgers just like the pictures. And they were so delicious. And I'd just go and have one and actually enjoy it. They even had good pickles, and I don't like pickles. It was perfectly balanced. It's what you imagine, a fucking cheeseburger should be when you look at the photos on the screen. Anyway, so you have this. See, that solves why the universe is expanding. Is because of quantum probability. The probability of vectoring subquantum matter to grow into singularities that then interact and formalize a standard model through quantum particles and how those form. And then you have the algorithm of what the Hadron Collider or CERN Super Collider, is it the Hadron Collider? Am I sounding stupid? I'm talking too much. It's Hadron, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's a weird word. You never use it. And I was trying to work out a way to predict the probability, and that's when I started quitting because I was just like dizzy from thinking constantly nonstop and never sleeping, and then realizing that there's nothing to gain from this in general other than maybe fusion, where then we can control our reality, but then that leads into like god tier technology and manipulating our reality. No different than, say, somebody with a time machine that goes back and does something for their own benefit. And anyway, so the radiation decay by the volume of your void or your dark matter sponge pore, whatever you want to call it, the surface area is subdivided based on Hawking radiation because it's not going to be constant. It'll be sort of constant, but it's not going to be constantly vectoring at the center. And this allows space-time warping. So you'll get some weird like blops and the universe will expand based on where it's decaying quicker in one part of this spherical chicken. It's a Big Bang Theory joke. And so when it comes to conformal psychocosmology, then you have to incorporate, which I can't even find his equations online. It's driving me nuts. But we literally could collapse at any second, and it would happen so fast that no amount of reflex would even understand what the hell's going on. It would just be gone. But since we are stabilized, you have to consider Hawking radiation and how slow and the permeating gravitational wave flux of time is constant between any point, actually, between any 2 points, just like quantum entanglement throughout the entire universe. And yeah, see, this is why I don't, because there's so much to hold in your head. And as long as we figure out, as long as either we're in a fusion reactor to make sure it's not decaying, which either way we are, if it's a dark matter sponge, that, people say that you can hold an entire universe inside of a black hole. And what does that actually mean? Well, it's subdivisions of singularities. And what's the point? It's not like it's gonna earn me love, as if I could ever feel it again. To keep talking about this, because it just goes on and on. I do have some cool achievements. NASA, well, they claim the Russians tested it now, but the original articles, when I emailed them about various solutions on how to find leaks without technology on the ISS, let's say like there was an EMP or a solar flare or something, I don't know, that knocked out technology. All the sensors were gone that you needed to find a leak on the ISS. Because I don't know if they use rivets or what they fucking use, but that heat temperance, it's always going to flux back and forth, and so stuff wears out, and you're left up there. And so I emailed him recommending the simplest way was using tea leaves, based on the aerodynamic structure of leaves, to breathe in low barometric pressure environments. And they tested it and it worked. It's one of my achievements. I have a few others, like center of mass concept for disproving, well, not even disproving, just proving the shapes of planes without using satellites or planes, or if you're just a guy alone by a lake, you can prove that the earth is round or flat. As long as you understand gravity. That's the trick. And then, I don't know, there's so many. When I sold Einstein's light clock, somebody stole it and then they reworked it. And, I don't know, there's a ton of shit. There's just so much. Disproving why clocks, even mechanical clocks, how they function at separate altitudes away from center of mass, and one clock flying on a plane will show a different time than the one that's standing on the ground. That's a fun one. And disproving that, I don't even know his name, the guy that used sticks and shadows. Disprove that. How do you disprove the center of mass concept, though? testing shapes and planes. You really can't. I need to go drive. I'm starting to get a headache now. Pushing all this stuff out. I'm not capable of holding it all. I have to remember what I'm working towards. That's why I made all these videos. I've over 500 now. Trying to store my mind on here. So that I can keep moving forward in case I have to, reference back, because I'm not perfect. I'm not an encyclopedia. Not some book where you type something into it. It just exists in my brain forever. And honestly, I got to that point once. And nobody could talk to me. It was horrible. I knew what everybody was going to say before they said anything to me. I could just predict it because it was probable. Based on what I would say, I knew what they would say back, and I could manipulate any conversation. And pretty soon I realized I'm not even having conversations with people. It's like they aren't even allowed to think. Drinking helps, though. Calms it down. I think I'm going to still work towards that honorary if I can figure it out. If I can't, you guys can have it. I don't give a shit. I still know that I had the original solution. That I figured it out on my own. Without any education. All it took was learning matrix theory in the 4th grade. That's all it took. Matrices. One little idea can spark an entire revolution of the mind.